There was a boy who stood at the edge of everything he wanted but couldn't move. His name was Jacob, and he was 15 years old when he realized he was trapped inside a prison he'd built himself. Not made of walls or chains, but something far more suffocating: the fear of failing. It started small. A math test he didn't take because he hadn't studied enough. A basketball tryout he skipped because he wasn't sure he'd make the team. A girl he never spoke to because he was terrified she'd say no. Each time, he told himself the same lie: I'm just being smart. I'm protecting myself. But what he was really doing was shrinking. Day by day, choice by choice, he was becoming smaller than the life he was meant to live. By the time Jacob turned 16, he perfected the art of invisibility. He didn't raise his hand in class. He didn't try out for anything. He didn't take risks. And on the surface, it looked like he was fine. He had decent grades, a few friends, and parents who loved him. But inside, he was suffocating. Because deep down, Jacob knew the truth. He wasn't living. He was hiding. One afternoon, his father found him sitting alone in the garage, staring at an old wooden workbench covered in dust. Jacob's grandfather had built that bench decades ago, back when he was a carpenter. His father sat down beside him and said nothing for a long time. Then he asked a single question: "What are you so afraid of?" Jacob didn't answer at first, but his father waited. And finally, Jacob said the words he'd been carrying like stones in his chest: "I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid if I try, I'll prove it." His father looked at him with eyes that had seen their own share of failure. And then he told him a story about Jacob's grandfather, the man who built the bench, the man Jacob had always admired but never really knew. "Your grandfather," his father began, "wasn't always a great carpenter. In fact, when he first started, he was terrible. He built a chair once that collapsed the moment someone sat in it. He made a table that wobbled so badly it had to be thrown away. People laughed at him. They told him to quit. And for a while, he believed them. He stopped building. He went back to working at a factory, doing what was safe, doing what didn't require him to risk anything." Jacob listened, his chest tightening. "But one day," his father continued, "something changed. He was walking past a construction site and saw a building going up, and he realized something that broke him open. Every brick in that building had been laid by someone who'd probably laid 1,000 bad bricks before they got good. Every beam had been cut by hands that had once measured wrong. Every structure standing tall in this world was built by people who'd failed more times than they'd succeeded. And he understood then that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up every single time you do." His father stood and ran his hand across the workbench. "This bench," he said, "was one of the first things your grandfather made after he went back to carpentry. It's not perfect. See that corner? It's uneven. See those joints? They're rough. But you know what? It's still here. 50 years later, it's still standing. Because he didn't let fear stop him from starting again." Jacob felt something crack inside him. Not breaking, but opening. Like light was finally getting through. "Your grandfather taught me something," his father said, looking at him now with a steady gaze. "He taught me that the strongest people aren't the ones who never fail. They're the ones who fail and keep going anyway. Strength isn't a shield that protects you from hard things. It's the muscle you build by doing them." That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his grandfather, about the crooked bench, about the collapsed chair, about all the things that had gone wrong before anything went right. And he realized something that changed everything. He had been measuring strength all wrong. He thought strength meant being perfect, being invincible, being someone who never stumbled, never struggled, never needed help. But that wasn't strength. That was a fantasy. Real strength, he understood now, was something entirely different. It was the willingness to try even when you might fail. It was the courage to be imperfect, to be seen, to be vulnerable. It was the discipline to show up again after you'd been knocked down. The next morning, Jacob walked into school and did something he hadn't done in years. He raised his hand in English class. His voice shook when he spoke. His answer wasn't perfect, but he did it. And the world didn't end. That afternoon, he signed up for the spring play, even though he'd never acted before. A week later, He asked a girl to coffee, even though his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst. She said yes. None of it was easy. He forgot his lines at the first rehearsal. He stumbled over his words on the coffee date. But something had shifted. He was no longer waiting to be perfect before he lived. He was living imperfectly, courageously, and for the first time in years, he felt alive. Months passed. Jacob didn't become the best actor. He didn't become the most popular kid. But he became something far more valuable. He became someone who wasn't afraid of his own humanity. Someone who understood that falling down wasn't the opposite of strength. It was part of it. One evening, he went back to the garage and stood in front of his grandfather's workbench. He ran his fingers over the uneven corner, the rough joints, the imperfections his father had pointed out, and he smiled, because he finally understood what his grandfather had known all along. The things we build, the lives we create, they don't have to be perfect to be strong. They just have to be real. The secret to a strong mind isn't avoiding failure. It's redefining it. It's understanding that every time you try and fall short, you're not proving you're weak. You're proving you're brave. You're building the only kind of strength that lasts. The kind that comes from getting back up, from starting again, from refusing to let fear decide how small your life will be. Jacob learned that strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you earn. Every single time you choose courage over comfort. Every single time you try, even when you're terrified. Every single time you stand back up after the world knocks you down. That's when you become strong. Not because you never break, but because you keep building anyway. And the most powerful truth of all, the one that will change everything if you let it, you don't need to be fearless to be strong. You just need to be willing to be afraid and move forward anyway. That's the secret. That's always been the secret.